So BLADEE is one of my favorite artists ever, and despite his popularity, I just don't see many videos on here like ranking his albums. So I just figured I would. He's got 16 albums out, and even though Rip BLADEE is a great EP, I'm just not going to include it. And this also goes for the numerous other Drain Gang adjacent albums I love. But aside from that, like, I'm just going to hop into it.
Say a prayer, you should be the one that say it. Not for this world, but it's true on another layer.
I honestly don't have much to say about this one, and I know I'm not the only one in that boat. This project really just seems like BLADEE trying a more poppy and electronic sound, which isn't inherently bad, but the songs feel a little underdeveloped and don't really offer much more than a passable experience. Funny enough, my favorite songs from this album are the ones that ended up on the deluxe, like the Drama with Charlie XCX, some of the remixes like the one with OK Lou, and even better is a Salem remix of the song Grace, which is really cool considering I'm a massive Salem fan, and I've always found connections from their music to BLADEE's, so to hear it actually happen is pretty sick. But yeah, this one's just kind of like alright for me. Not bad, but not one I come back to like ever, really.
You're not a fucking soul, 20 bitches eating Wendy's. Baby cobra bending corners, leave you dead like candy.
This is another one where I feel like I just have not much to say, but I think it's for a different reason. In my opinion, this one is just suffering from the fact that every member is just kind of watering down their sound. Like, there's like not much interesting going on, and despite there being some highlights, there's just a lot of songs that feel like they go nowhere or are just leftovers. Again, it's not horrible, but it's just a project that I never really go back to other than like a handful of songs. Spider is honestly a difficult one for me, because there's definitely interesting songs to be had here, but like, honestly, there's a lot of songs that just don't do anything for me at all. I feel like a lot of the ideas here just sound like a mess or executed in a way that just doesn't play to his strengths at all. Understatement is a really good opener though, and I Am Slowly But Surely Losing Hope and Velociraptor are also pretty good like rock songs. Some songs like Drain Story, Nothing, and She's Always Dancing do pretty much nothing for me though. Some of my least favorite BLADEE songs easily. It's just a mixed bag overall that I hope grows on me, but honestly, for now is just on the fence.
I'm in your area 51. She wanna have some fun, I tell her come along, I go to Rainbow.
I apologize for rushing through this one, but this is the first project on the list that I do genuinely enjoy. My only main qualm is the fact that it's just a bit scant and not the most memorable for either artist, but it still has some good production in songs like Area 51, and I'll take this over DNG for being a much easier listen. Again, 7 songs, a bit scant, but I'll take it.
Only you can glue my blue and broken, shattered, battered porcelain heart.
Psychos is a project that I really like, but it's not one that I'm going to either artist for. I'm a big indie rock fan, but Psychos isn't exactly an indie rock masterclass or anything. It's just a pretty solid album with some cool highlights. Ghosts is really good, and the very post-punk influenced Golden God is also pretty solid. It's a nice easy listen that's mostly good, but definitely not either artist's strong suit from a genre perspective. But again, like, not bad at all, and I still go back to it a decent bit.
One shot, click, reload, 20,000 THB, make a call to Nino.
This album is basically just a better version of the DNG album, and that's pretty much all I need to say. It isn't that long, and admittedly, again, a little low impact, but there is a stronger track list here due to it only being 8 songs, and Western Union is an absolute 10 out of 10 that never gets old. I enjoy it quite a bit, but definitely not a super special project in my eyes, but it's alright.
Every moment special, you make every moment special, you make.
Extor is the first album on this list that I could really come back to a lot, and also feels like an essential BLADEE album. It's not perfect, it has some songs that kind of annoy me, not gonna lie, like Open Symbols or Merry-Go-Round, but it has a lot of highlights like the super ethereal ambient pop song Every Moment Special, or songs like Wonderland and Love Story that are just really catchy. Again, it's not like a great album, but it's really close, and I think it's an important one in his discography.
If I can't beat it, let it beat me. If I can't eat at night, I'ma let it eat me.
This might be the first hot take of the list, but honestly, I think this is a pretty appropriate spot for this mixtape. In my opinion, the only reason it's not super high is due to the more basic production and sounds explored here, and I have never been a fan of Best Buy. However, a lot of this album is spent with BLADEE making really good straightforward trap songs like Lordship, Backstreet Boys, Red Light Moments, And also the lyrics on this album tend to stand out a lot. But yeah, this is a pretty good mixtape, and even if it isn't the most exciting release he's ever done, I think it still holds a lot of great songs. And on a good day, I could even see myself loving this thing, and maybe even rating it higher. Alright, this is the first album on the list that I would say I actually do genuinely love. Similar to Working on Dying, this one is spent making more straightforward trap songs, but I think the ideas presented here are way more interesting. Obviously Decay, I'm Goofy, Westfield, 1D, etc. They're all really good, but I enjoyed the album's experimental moments too, like Golden Boy or Puppet Master. And one thing that does confuse me though with this album is that it comes down to like a lot of flows that sound the same, a lot of melodies that sound the same. But aside from that, it's still pretty enjoyable and definitely one that I've grown to enjoy more and more over time, and I do genuinely love the album now. Maybe on a good day I could even bump this up a spot or two, but right now I think this feels right.
Yes, 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 yes.
Crest is definitely the Blade album for non-Blade fans, but that doesn't mean it's bad. This is more of a synth and art pop album rather than him doing cloud rap, but Blade and Echo are pretty good at this sound, and even if it's not really the sound I like Blade for, I still come away from this thing pretty pleased. The SS Red Cross is such an underrated song, and it's easily got one of my favorite instrumentals, and the singles for this album, like basically the songs you hear all the time, like Flag is Raised, those are also pretty much classics at this point. I also think this thing's really consistent, and it being 9 songs is definitely to its benefit. Overall, it's a great project that I'm not going to put any higher just due to it being a sound that I'm not as into, but the actual songs themselves I do really enjoy, and the sound is still pretty good. It's just not the one I go to Blade for. Now this is a sound that I'm not exactly used to hearing from Blade, but he adapts pretty well here, and even if his vocals on Rage Beats are kind of odd to hear, I think it's still really enjoyable. The production on here is amazing though, and hearing White Armor and Filthy on the same album is pretty sick. As well as one of my favorite ambient artists, Malibu. Oh, and JamesFerraro of all people. Yeah, that JamesFerraro. Yeah, he's here as well, which is pretty sick considering how much of a James fan I am. On that same note, it's also really sick to see both of them land on a little verified Microsoft video last year. But yeah, all that aside, go listen to these James albums. I really recommend them. But back to Cool Visions, it's a long album and it's honestly got a ton of highlights and not as many weak points for a 30-song album. The list of the best songs, I'd probably go Other Side, King Nothing, End of the Road Boys, Red Cross, Young Sherman, Sad Meal, and Rivers Flowing You. I also really love how some songs are just like throwing sound effects everywhere and like producer tags. It sounds really crazy. But yeah, it's a great album that's pretty odd for Blade, but I've grown to enjoy a lot more over time. So I didn't go too in-depth on Extor, but I mentioned it being an essential Blade album because it kind of documents his shift in aesthetics. But this album to me feels like the dawn of a new era for him, like completely, like in full album form. And it was one of the first Blade albums I heard, considering I was really getting into him around the time, so I have some nostalgia for this one as well. I like the moments where he flirts with a more ambient sound, like Wings in Motion. Also the outro Swan Lake.
It's freezing on the Swan Lake, can't come home.
The album really has a strong consistency, and most of the songs here are great, and honestly a bit underrated. It Girl, Finder, and especially 100s, which has like this crazy beat drop. I've always been a big fan of that one. I will admit it's not as hype as other Blade albums, which means I'm not exactly like gonna play it all the time, but I'm still into this one a lot, and I come back to this one quite a bit. It's definitely one that deserves more love than it already has, and I really hope this one like continues to grow on people. Also, this album for me really does document a great era for Drain Gang when they were like all messing with art pop sounds, which could be thanks to Echo 2K's amazing album E, which honestly could get its own video in the future. Absolute must listen, even for non-Blade fans. Can't recommend it enough.
Bad adrenaline. Oh, did you say anything? Just know they do anything to be in the spot you're in. Back to bed again, skin on me, I said again. Being in the head I'm in, I would need a better friend.
Easily the most iconic Blade album, whether you like it or not, and arguably his most definitive work. But honestly, no album of his is really definitive, as I feel like he's always known for just like doing what he wants to do, and each album is a different phase, so there's never been like a growth period or anything. He's just always been doing his thing. But man, this album has so many classics that it's actually impressive. Like, I can just play a bunch off right now, and people who are watching who maybe aren't even fans will probably know them.
If it's a deep, I gotta bite it. If I see weed, I gotta light it.
I think the only reason I wouldn't call it his best personally is just due to it being pretty long and not as watertight as like the next few albums. But I still love it to death, and it's definitely an important album for him. And I mean, the longer track list does make sense, and it's mostly pretty great. But yeah, it's also just a mixtape, so that's kind of the thing.
Your blood tastes so sweet, like sugar, baby. Like sugar, baby.
This was my favorite Blade album for a while, and that's honestly still a pretty understandable take. This is one of his most emotional albums for sure, and the production is incredibly cold and like airy. But Blade's using a ton of reverb has always been a plus for me, not a detractor at all. I love the opening run of songs in the album, and Who Goes There is like one of his best songs ever, easily. I think the album was really consistent with a ton of high highs. Like, the song Sugar is one of the most beautiful songs he's ever made, which isn't something you'd expect to like say about a Blade song. I find this one to be a really heavy listen too, while holding some of Blade's best hooks, so it's a good combo of like emotional but also just really catchy, and it's just amazing. This is an album that I'm incredibly nostalgic for now, but like, even putting that aside, this is probably his catchiest album ever. It's really, really fun for some reason, and that energy definitely radiates on the listener. I think this album was also a near perfect combo of just great trap songs, but also still holding on to some of the cloud rap aesthetics on songs like, you know, I Think or Ego Baby. The only reason this isn't a perfect listen is maybe the last two songs that are just kind of alright, but like, everything else is seriously like amazing, and so many of my favorite Blade songs are on here, it's insane. I would also argue this is a perfect album to like start with if you're trying to get into him, and even if I prefer his more cloud rap experimental stuff, this one still has that vibe on some songs, and I think it's just a really, really consistently fun, catchy, and just awesome album. Yeah, this is easily my favorite. Sure, it's his first album, but I feel like Blade already knew what he was doing, and this just documents a phase for him and cloud rap that was incredibly special. Also, the lyrics here and the production here is just absolutely amazing. I struggle to find many albums that sound as ethereal as this one, and the beat selection could not be more perfect. Delete is like an insane opener that genuinely sounds unreal. And songs like Shadowface and Freeze, for instance, are like really early examples of like that kind of ambient sound he's always been into. Also, the song eBay is like easily like my favorite Blade song ever. I listen to it every day. It never gets old. The album also being 9 songs has always worked to its benefit for me, because each song flows perfectly and it never gets old quick, even though I could probably listen to 10 more songs of this. It's just an amazing album, and a personal favorite for me that I see as his most flawless, but also as one of his most intriguing in sound, lyrics, and just like anything, pretty much. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the ranking. I don't have much to say aside from the fact that I would love to make more videos in the future, and I apologize if the commentary is like kind of boring. I just wanted to get this list out there, and if no one sees it, I could care less, honestly, but this was pretty fun to make, and it gave me an excuse to listen to them even more than I already do, so yeah, that was pretty fun. Yeah, peace.